Our reading this morning will be from Galatians chapter 6, verse 2. Bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ.
When you think of heroes in the Old Testament, Moses has to be somewhere near the top of the list, right? I mean, he does all the things. There is, when he is a child and he nearly gets killed, he gets thrown into the Red Sea, survives that. It's pretty cool. Grows up in Pharaoh's house, somehow remembers his identity as one of the children of Israel. He enacts a little vigilante justice. He kills a guy. He lives life as a fugitive. He lives in the wilderness. He's a shepherd. Moses is a tough dude. He comes back to Egypt. He announces to the people that God wants to set them free, and they don't like it. They complain. He lives through 10 plagues and all of this stuff. He makes it through the Red Sea crossing. Moses is a tough dude. Is there anybody at our church that reminds you of Moses? Jerry Hall has the beard, but Jerry goes to first service, so that doesn't help me a lot. Anybody else remind you of Moses? I'm thinking of someone who is also Ancient of Days. James Hinkle? Did they bring up your name, James? Well, I think they did. So come here, Moses. James said, I wish I were an elder so I could fire him. Come on up, James. Oh, well. Guess what I have? Well, you don't get that first. Come on. All right, let's see. James. I don't know if this has a front or a back. What do y'all think? Yeah. There is a hole in there somewhere. Just go for daylight. This is just like when you went as a ghost to Halloween. That's a good look. Doesn't he look so much better this way? Okay. Nope, just lost a hearing aid. Nope. Hey, those are cheap. Don't worry about that. All right, here we go. I may have just changed it to the Titans game, so be careful. All right. James is the best. Okay. This is actually... I didn't mean for this to be a straight jacket, James. That's next week's sermon, and there's a different person in it. Okay. All right. James says he puts his pants on just like everyone else, both legs at a time. James, this whole church is just sitting here laughing at you and me. Hey!
All right. I should have worn my beard.
Okay. James, I'm sorry. Is this on backwards? Well, he's been to all that trouble. We might as well go all the way. Let's see. I'm going to try to be more helpful this time. Hey, that was inside out. That might have been part of the problem. Okay. Can I have an arm, Mr. Moses? Can I have another arm, Mr. Moses? All right. Does he get a belt or no? Yeah, you need a belt. This is getting a little awkward, but okay. I trust that you can tie this.
My oldest son is here with his family at 3 at my grandkids. They've never seen me like this.
Yeah, I don't believe that for a second. This is how he normally does Thanksgiving, isn't it? You know, like he stands over the table and pronounces the blessing over the turkey. It's Moses. You want a turban?
Yeah.
I don't even know what to do with this. I just borrowed this from Carolyn, you know. All right, and of course, yeah, no turban. You don't need a turban. In Middle Tennessee, you walk around with a turban. It sometimes causes trouble. Okay, and here is
I need this.
your staff. Come on over, James. Does it?
I have to get up here.
Yeah, probably. Doesn't he look good? Man. Are we Moses or the Pope right now? And if you go like this, you're Miss America. You know? Okay. So Moses, despite what his battle with the tunic looked like, is one tough dude, right? Moses is strong. He is faithful. He is the guy in the Old Testament. And our story this morning is in Exodus chapter 17. So if you've got your Bible handy, I would really like you to turn to that. It's Exodus chapter 17, verse 8, when something bad happens. The Bible tells us there that in this particular town, Rephidim, the Amalekites came and attacked Israel. Now this is a big deal because this is the first battle that Israel has tasted. I say it's their first battle because the last time there was an army behind them, God baptized them in the Red Sea. So they never actually experienced combat. But Exodus 17 verse 8 says that the Amalekites came and attacked. So that tells me this is the first time Israel has experienced combat. And with a leader like that, how could they possibly lose? What we know is they've been slaves for 400 years. They haven't been doing army drills because you don't let the slaves do that. They don't have a stockpile of weapons because you don't let the slaves do that. We don't know what armament they had. We don't know what training they had. They don't have a tradition of military service. Right? They don't. So they get attacked, presumably out of the blue. I'm moving over here for my safety. And by the way, the Amalekites who do this thing, Moses doesn't know this, but you and I do because we were born a whole lot later than Moses and James. We know that these Amalekites are a people who are a persistent thorn in the side of Israel from this moment forward. A few hundred years later in the story, in 1 Samuel 15, God commanded Saul to attack the Amalekites as payback, as punishment for the story you and I are about to read. They show up again later in the story with King David in 1 Samuel 30. In fact, even Esther's story. Do you remember who the bad guy in Esther's story was? Haman, who was an Agagite, who was one of the Amalekites. So this is a long-running biblical feud. But we're at the Pearl Harbor moment of it. We're at the beginning of it. We're at the moment where it gets launched. So the Israelites are in the wilderness. They've crossed the Red Sea. They've experienced the 10 plagues. They have the manna and the quail, and the water was made drinkable there in Exodus 17. You've had all these miracles. But now we face a new challenge. This time it's not Israel against the elements or Israel against itself. It's we've been ambushed. We've been attacked. What do you do? So Moses, here's what you did. This is Exodus 17, verse 9. I'll give you your lines for you. Moses said to Joshua, Joshua, choose for us men, go out and fight with Amalek.
Go out and fight the Amaleks.
There you go. Good job, Moses. There you go, them too. And Moses, you're a pretty good delegator. You made that young buck Joshua go out there and fight the battle, didn't you?
Where's Josh?
Oh, we do need a Joshua. Who wants to be Joshua? I don't actually have anything for Joshua to do, so it's kind of a boring job. Okay, sorry, Joshua, you're out there fighting Amalekites somewhere. But notice in Exodus 17:9 what Moses says he's going to do. Tomorrow I will stand on top of the hill. Now, I don't know what you think when you read this first, but I think that there's an interesting strategy going on here. Moses says, Joshua, you go to find some guys to go to battle, and I'll go up on top of the mountain and watch. That sounds like a Matthew Hyatt military strategy right there. Hey, Dan, why don't you go take on those bad guys for me? I'll be at home. But where did Moses go? James just demonstrated. On top of the mountain. And what did he bring with him? The stick. Okay, it sounds so much less exciting when you call it the stick. You've got to call it the staff of God. You've got to say it kind of, or maybe the rod, but not the stick. I mean, the stick. the staff of God. That's right, Katie. So, thank you for your help, Shady
Be
Hot.
my Joshua.
She probably would like taking on some Amalekites. And I'm afraid I might be an Amalekite someday. What did God tell Moses to take up there? The staff. What's significant about this thing in the Bible story? Do you remember? You've seen this before, haven't you? Exodus 4 turned into a snake. You remember when Moses is making excuses to God, saying, I don't want to go talk to the Israelites. I don't want to talk to the Egyptians. I'm scared of this stuff. They're not going to believe me. God asked Moses a question. He said, Moses, what's in your hand? And it was?
My rod.
Rod. And what did he do with it? He threw it down.
No.
Yeah. And it turned into,
That's another story.
Exodus 4. It turned into a
Oh, you're back
snake.
in Exodus 4.
Yeah. No, I love this story, by the way. It turns into a snake.
Run, girl, run.
And the Bible actually says in Exodus 4 that Moses ran away from it. Okay, that's really convincing terror right there, isn't it? If James doesn't get an Academy Award for today's service, I don't know. It's rigged or something. So the thing that's even more incredible to me than that isn't just that he ran from it, is what God told him to do next. He said, go catch it.
Where's Joanne Gray when I need her with a gun?
Well, this is your gun. And it turned into a snake. So here, I'll hand it to you. James picked it up by the tail, and voila, it was back to being a staff. But that's not the only time this party trick happened. You remember when Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh's house, Exodus 7, same thing happens. Except the Bible's a little bit funny, James. I didn't know this till just recently. I missed this. I got it from our Holy Ghost Stories podcast, and then I went and looked it up to see how it played. But in Exodus 7, when Moses throws down, or Aaron throws down the rod in front of Pharaoh that time, it uses a different word in the Hebrew than serpent. It uses a word that gets translated dragon, sea monster, or crocodile. So I don't know exactly what this one looked like, but he throws it down, you remember. And then Egyptian magicians throw down their rods, and theirs become little rat snakes. But James's became a dragon? Sorry, not James's, Moses's. I got confused who I'm talking to. And you remember what happens to the rod of the Lord in that story? It ate the others. That's a story. And then he had to pick it back up again. That's the miracle nobody talks about. You know, it's one thing when I picture James picking up the little rat snake. It's another thing when I picture him chasing the dragon around the room. But that's the way that story plays out. Let me tell you a few more things about what James is holding in that passage and what Moses is holding in this story. In Exodus 8, Moses raises that staff above the waters of the Nile. And you know what happens to the waters? They turn to blood, waters of the Nile. Right? And then after that, he raises his staff over the waters again. James, you want to try to change the baptistry? It turned into blood, and next time, out came frogs when he raised the staff of God over it.
It's a little ducky.
There's a ducky, not a frog. That's why James is not quite as good as Moses. The plague of ducks was nowhere near. He's terrified. Then in Exodus 8, he strikes the ground with his staff, and the dust of the ground becomes gnats, and gnats take over the land of Egypt. In Exodus 9, Moses raised his staff towards heaven, and that's when thunder and hail and fire came down and destroyed all of the Egyptian crops. In chapter 10, he raised it, and a plague of locusts came on the people. At Passover, God told Moses to eat the meal with his sandals on and his staff in his hand. Keep your gun loaded. Keep one in the chamber. That's kind of the image. In Exodus 14, we cross the Red Sea with the staff of God leading the way. Israel passes through. And in chapter 17, when Israel is complaining against you, Moses, that there's no water to drink, God tells Moses to strike the rock with that staff, and all of a sudden, you get water to drink. So Moses, you and the staff of God have had a pretty good partnership so far.
So far, so good.
So far, so good.
Power.
So, when Moses says, I'm going on top of the mountain with the staff of God, what's this a demonstration of? This is a demonstration of we're winning this battle not because we're well trained, because we're not. Not because there's more of us, because there's not. Not because we have better equipment or technology or armor, because we don't. We're winning this battle because God is present with his people. Isn't this a cool story? This is a demonstration of something that we tend to forget. We tend to forget that the only way Israel wins a battle, the only way we win a battle, is if we recognize that that battle belongs to God. Verse 10. Joshua did as Moses commanded him and fought with Amalek, while Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. Moses, do you see Aaron and Hur anywhere in this room?
They're hiding under the.
No, I think Aaron and Hur are out here somewhere. I think they should come with you. He said, pay back.
I should get your kids.
They're a little too violent for you, James.
Phil would be mine.
So, is he her or is he? No. Come on up, Aaron.
I know for sure. Then Wes would be my other.
All right, Wes, come on up. So we've got Aaron and Hur, and they go up on the mountain with Moses.
Come on up on the mountain.
Verse 11. Whenever Moses held up his hand, and what's in his hand? It's the staff, not the stick, the staff. Israel prevailed because this is a God thing. This is a God battle. And whenever he lowered his hand, what happens? They start losing. Amalek prevails. I want you to try something, James. Let's get that staff up in the air. Let's get both hands on that. Nice and high. You guys too. You don't have a staff, you get an imaginary staff. You guys too. You all get imaginary staffs. Both hands up. This is that Venn diagram overlap between a church and a bank robbery. All right, you got to put your hands in the air, no sudden movements. All right. Anybody's arms getting tired yet? Frank, while they're doing that, let's do this.
In heavenly armor we'll enter the land. The battle belongs to the Lord. No weapon that fashioned against us will stand. The battle belongs to the Lord. And we sing glory, honor, power, and strength to the Lord. And we sing glory, honor, power, and strength to the Lord. When your enemy presses and hardly not fear, the battle belongs to the Lord. Take courage, my friend, your redemption is near. The battle belongs to the Lord, and we sing glory, honor, power, and strength to the Lord, and we sing glory, honor, power, and strength to the Lord.
I didn't say you could put your hands down. Every time you put your hands down, an Amalekite kills an Israelite. How do you feel about that, you anti-Semites? Some of you evidently. Okay, so here's the thing. That's getting kind of heavy, isn't it, James?
I tell you what,
Okay. So
you boys supposed to help me here.
these guys have quit. So all right, they can put their hands down. You can't. So here's what's happening. You've heard this story before. Verse 12 says, "But Moses' hands grew weary." I thought about trying to find a much longer song because I thought that would make them suffer. But we kind of burst out of that anyway. But here's what it says. It says, Aaron and Hur took a stone and set it behind him. So, can you help with this? Here we go. They took a rock
I can sit.
and they set him down on it. And then they stood beside him and they held up his arms. So it's your job to hold up Hinkle's arms until church ends at 11:30. Now, it's funny. This stick is not all that substantive. Okay, this is not the sort of stick that you were beaten with as a child. Those were switches. But even for 4 minutes now, your arms don't feel great doing that. And I want you guys to let James relax a little bit. Bring those down because James has been through enough of things I've done to him over the years. But I want you guys to actually hold on to him for this story. It just strikes me when you read this text. It's so simple. What did they do? Okay. The first thing is this is a story about dependence on God. That's why it's the rod of God. That's why it's on top of the hill. That's why it's a God thing. But for Moses to depend on God, he needed his brothers to hold him up. He needed shored up. He needed propped up. He needed help. What did they give him? They gave him a rock. I mean, did they go to Home Depot and buy it? No, they looked around. Hey, that rock looks like that'll do. Right? This isn't complicated. They propped up his arms. And you know, Aaron's arms and Hur's arms, their arms are going to get tired too. But the thing is, they can kind of trade in and out. They can trade places. They can find comfortable positions. No one person has to bear this alone. Is the sermon obvious yet? Okay. This week, I asked for these stories. Should we release James from his suffering? I think we should. All right, James, you're done. You're good. I'm not saying that Moses in first service beat me with a stick, but Moses in first service beat me with a stick. So I know, I'm kind of disappointed in you. This week, I asked you for some stories of some times that people put a rock under you and held up your arms. There could have been 100 more of these, but these are the ones I get to share with you this morning. Here's what Susan Bradford wrote. She said, one Saturday in January 1999, my first husband announced he was moving out that day. I don't remember where the children were that morning, but they weren't home. In my shock, I managed to reach out to my best friend who lived nearby to let her know what was happening. It took a couple of hours for him to get his things together. I have no memory of how he moved out his furniture, but he did. Within minutes of his leaving, my friends Nancy and Debbie pulled into my driveway. Nancy had called Debbie, and the two of them had been circling the block waiting for him to leave the house. I couldn't tell you one thing that they said, but they sat with me and cried with me and prayed with me and loved me. I knew they would do anything they could to help me and the kids in the days to come, and they did. The next weeks and months were a roller coaster as we navigated separation, counseling, and eventually divorce. In those days, divorce was not common in our church fellowship, but my friends never judged me or tried to tell me what to do. They sat with me and listened and prayed and loved. I know they were sent by God to carry me through, to prop me up. Megan Bennett. When my grandpa died in 2020, Debbie Martin had dropped off a bag on the front porch, because COVID. And it was simple. Potato soup and a note. She made us her mother's recipe because she said when she's sad, she makes herself some because it's like a hug from a past loved one. It was beyond comforting for some reason. Our friends in small group got real deep and raw in prayer with us when we got our infertility diagnosis. Friends came to the hospital to celebrate new life with us when Brooks arrived. The meals and the visits we got after we came home with him. Yard work was done, chores were tended to, all the things. How about that time when my father-in-law passed and our sweet friends drove 3.5 hours for the funeral? I have way too much I could send you. Jason didn't know that Megan emailed me, but here's what he said. I think of what we went through recently with my dad's unexpected illness and death that happened in a matter of weeks. The support we got was simply amazing. Our Burns family didn't wait for us to ask for something, they just showed up. It was a tough time for me personally, becoming a new dad and losing a dad in the same year. We were making multiple trips to Memphis and the hospital, and we were flooded with food and gas gift cards. People were checking on us. We even had some amazing people drive to Memphis to help move furniture and prepare a place at my parents' house for Dad's hospice care. The amount of people who drove from Dixon County to Mississippi from the funeral left me speechless. And that reminded me how awesome church family is. They're so good at knowing what to do to help people in tough situations. We felt the love, the prayers, and support throughout this whole process. Not only that, it served as a reminder to me on how I can help others in the future. We truly saw Jesus working through these amazing people. Emily Moore. Some of you remember Marty and Emily. They watch our services online. They're not here in the room with us this morning, but I bet they're watching today. Emily tells a story of several years ago when she was a new mom. She said, as a mom of 2 toddlers at the time, I was driving home up the driveway and I ran over something. I knew it was an animal of some sort. I couldn't look. I didn't want my kids to see the carcass of a cat or a dog or a chicken or a rabbit. I just couldn't deal with it. I ran inside with the kids so that they didn't see it, and I called my dad. He was there within 10 minutes. He quietly drove up, got out of his truck, picked up the body, tossed it in the bed of his truck, and took care of it so the kids didn't see it. To this day, I still have no idea what it was. Now that's a daddy coming to the rescue of his adult daughter in the smallest of circumstances. I could always call on him. He was and will forever be my hero. I miss him. Kathy Gabriel. When I was pregnant with Destiny as a single mom, I had just graduated college and started a new job in Nashville where I didn't know a single soul. I started attending church near where I lived. There were a lot of problems with the pregnancy, and I was put on bed rest for the last few months. I had just started work, so all that time was without pay. I had no source of income. The church I was attending found out about my financial situation, and the youth group hosted parents' nights to raise funds to help me. They gave me a check that covered rent and utilities for the remainder of my pregnancy. There was even a family there who offered for me and my baby to live with them until we could afford our own place. The show of love and care from these people I didn't even know at the lowest time of my life, when I didn't know how I could afford to live from one day to the next, taking care of my baby was so amazing. They never judged me or expected anything in return. Some of them visited me in the hospital when I had complications with the pregnancy. This experience is most likely the main reason I remained in church. If it had been different, I might not have stayed. At the most alone time in my life, dealing with the scary prospect of raising a child on my own with no support, they came alongside me and let me know I wasn't alone. That show of God's love and grace was tangible. It meant everything to me. Josh Phelps wrote about a story that he and Brendan and Todd have all told me. They were at church camp when their dad died suddenly of a heart attack, suddenly, unexpectedly. The entire youth group showed up at the funeral. Tom Todd took a school bus of people from church camp to the funeral. I wish I could have seen the look on the funeral director's face when 100 smelly Thursday camp kids poured out and came to sing those hymns and those songs at that service. Savannah Gabriel. Back in high school, when my mental health was pretty bad, I had a panic attack one night, and I couldn't call my sister Kaya like I usually did because she was working. So I texted Brittany, and she let me come over like 8 p.m. when she was 8 or 9 months pregnant with Ty, and let me have a meltdown in her parking lot for about an hour. She helped me and talked me through it, then gave me water and let me pet her dogs before I felt okay to leave. She didn't make me feel crazy. She didn't try to solve everything for me. She just held space for me and made sure I wasn't alone. Because Savannah hates me, she wrote these words because she knew I'd have to say it in front of Brittany in church. Quote, "Brittany is awesome." Burned a little bit coming out. Leanna Sutherland. Leanna has been at Burns almost as long as anyone's ever been at this church. The story's quite some time ago. Tim left on a Sunday afternoon. The girls were both under school age. Zoe, a baby, and Izzy, 3. In the afternoons, I would babysit the girl next door and fix supper for her grandmother when she got home from work. It was several days before Izzy asked where Daddy was. I told her he was gone, stayed in my room. I was crying on my bed with the door shut. She knocked and came in to ask if I was okay. I told her, not right now. She left the room. Zoe was already in bed at this time. I heard Izzy and Chelsea, the girl next door, whispering. They came back in and told me they had a surprise for me. They covered my eyes and took me to the bathroom where one gave me a facial and the other gave me a pedicure. The exact moment I was ready to give up, I knew it was God telling me that I had very special reasons not to give up. They were just children and didn't know the effect it had on me, but it reinforced my resolve against the devil who'd torn apart my family. When Tim left me and the girls and asked for a divorce, I was a stay-at-home mom. I can't explain all the emotions and turmoil we went through. My church family at Burns showed up in every way. Pam Coons called to see if I needed a job and got me an interview for the position at Interstate Packaging that I'm still at today. Faye Eaton gave me clothes to fit to wear to the interview because I had lost so much weight during the stress. Matt and Amy Rich and their boys came over the very day they found out Tim left to fix the garage door in the house that wouldn't shut or lock. The group of men at church came to my house, cleaned gutters, the AC unit, mowed, weed eated, pressure washed, secured the trampoline, all the things. Keith and Donna Oliver gave me so much support. Brenda Wall checked on me and spent time with me and the kids. So many Christians gave money, bought groceries, paid my house note, called, wrote cards, and as a whole, we were showered with so much love. At a time when I felt rejected, dysfunctional, so very hurt and broken, the Burns family showed me God's love and reinforced my faith. When the person I loved most gave up on me, Burns did not. I can't remember all of the names, don't want to leave anyone out, but everyone gave me and the girls love and support. One more. Greer Henson. My father had a near-fatal heart attack when I was 13. He recovered, but there were things that challenged his health from that point forward, including cold weather that was painful and made breathing difficult. By the time I was a senior in high school, my father came to every football game I ever played, but late that year it became unseasonably cold, and we had an away game in West Tennessee. My sweet daddy apologized to me and said he wouldn't be at the game because of the weather. I understood, but still felt disappointed that he wouldn't be there for the first time. The first half of the game was just average. I played offense, defense, and all the special teams, including being the kicker. Although we were winning, I felt slow and uninspired. My knee hurt, and my kickoffs were less than stellar. When we came out after halftime, we were warming up. I saw a man's silhouette on the hillside wearing Carhartt coveralls. He seemed familiar, his stance, his attentive look, and when I turned to look, it was my father. Suddenly, everything was right. When I kicked off, it went in the end zone. My knee felt fine. I caught passes. I made tackles all over the field. We won the game, and I rode the bus back to school. When I got home, I hugged my daddy and thanked him. He explained that when he told my oldest brother, Mark, that it was too cold for him to go to the game, Mark showed up and offered to drive him to the game, and if he got too cold, he'd bring him home. When they got to the visitor stadium, my brother explained the situation to the officials, and he was allowed to park on the hillside and keep the truck running. My father had been there all along with his son, getting in and out of the truck to stay warm. It wasn't until I knew he was there that it changed me. Next fall will be 40 years since that cold night, and that memory grows warmer with time. My father found a way. My brother made a way, and they both showed me the way. I sometimes dream about the day I get to where I'm going. Maybe I'll look on that heavenly hillside and see my father and his son that made the way for me, and they were there all along. That was just the stories that people emailed me by lunch yesterday. There's more. There's more that some of you weren't ready to write yet or to let me share, or that you hadn't thought about. But I want to take just a moment or two before we wrap up this sermon and this service. I want you to think about the time somebody slid a rock under your butt and lifted up your arms. Did you hear in those stories how simple it was? I showed up. Pam, I'm not putting down Pam's work, but Pam's job at the time was getting people jobs. So helping Leanna kind of wasn't, it was what she did for a living, but it changed Leanna's life. Potato soup, a manicure and a pedicure, being at a ball game, it's not that complicated. We're going to sing a song about this, and while we sing it, I want you to think about the times that you felt alone and someone propped you up. James, I like you more than I like Jerry Hall because I made Jerry keep his arms up the entire service, but I couldn't do that to you. So right about now, we asked Jerry, how you doing? And I think his fingernails were starting to go blue. So, does the church have good insurance, by the way? I don't know. You know, life is hard. And there are all sorts of things that we face every day. We've got to depend on God to get through it. But to depend on God, a lot of times we need somebody's help to keep us pointed in that direction. That's what this story's about. Did you hear the scripture reading right before we started? Kenny did a good job with that for us. It was Galatians 6. Bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. Have you ever wanted to know how you could summarize Jesus' law? I mean, sometimes we go to the Sermon on the Mount. Sometimes we say, love God, love neighbor. That's all true. But the law of Christ is not, thou shalt take communion on the first day of the week every week until thou diest. Thou shalt give 10% to the church, 11% if I want a riverfront mansion. It's bear one another's burdens, prop someone up. So here's the sermon. 2 things. Number 1, sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is shove a rock under someone's butt. It's going to sound great on social media, isn't it? Sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is prop someone up. Well, Matthew, I've never been to Bible college. There's a lot of Bible I don't know. I'm new to the church. I don't know all these Old Testament stories. Sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is prop someone up. Don't make it harder than it needs to be. Here's the second message. Sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is let someone prop you up. There are times that you are Moses, and there are times that you are Aaron and Hur. Everyone in this room will experience moments of life where you are one or the other, or sometimes both are happening at the same time. Let someone help you. That work for you? Is that simple enough? Let's stand and sing an invitation song.